So I just watched the first two episodes of Witch Watch, and my feelings are very mixed. I don't like the characters, but the scenarios the characters are put in are quite funny. And I saw this video by the Shonen Ouji. He makes really great videos. Link in the description to his channel and this video. And he says it's like Gintama. I love Gintama, and I think it's hilarious. I think the characters and the situations are pretty funny. So I want to see why he thinks this. Because he's probably read the manga. I don't know. We'll see.
This anime is the Gintama sequel everyone needs to see. Witch Watch might come off as just another silly rom-com, but it's basically Gintama with witches. The series has plenty of romance, but is also full of running gags, random humor, and jokes that are carried out way too long in classic Shonen Jump fashion. It's a series that borrows that familiar Gintama formula, but also feels even better than Gintama at times.
I don't know. Gintama is so unique. Like, the reason why this doesn't feel like Gintama to me, because the soul of Gintama for me is Gin himself. Someone once said this, that I think it was from a podcast I used to listen to, where they said, One Piece is about a boy becoming a man. Gintama is about that boy that became a man that now has to pay rent. And I feel as though that's so true. Like, Gintoki is like this 30-year-old guy, which already is kind of different in the landscape of shonen, like, titles, because most of the time, the characters tend to be younger. So having a 30-something-year-old is pretty cool. Obviously, there's classics like Rurouni Kenshin, and Kenshin's older. I don't think he's 30, but he's definitely in his 20s. I can't remember how old. But Kenshin's an older character. And obviously, like, the Joestars tend to be a bit older, right? Well, Jonathan was older later on in part one. So, to me, I don't know where he's going with that, but I'll carry on. Because these are younger characters.
Which is why in this video, I'd like to discuss the history behind Witch Watch and its creator, compare the tropes in this series and Gintama, and explain why this will be the best rom-com of 2025. Now, I keep saying this is the spiritual successor of Gintama,
Okay.
and part of that is because it's structured in a similar way, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. But the first...
Because, not... So far, not really. Even the world building. It's like the world building is kind of missing. Like, Gintama, it's weird and wacky because the aliens have literally invaded Edo, and that's what makes it weird. Whereas we just have a witch and an ogre that have landed, like, they're in a normal... the world seems normal. It's just a normal world, but apparently there's a witch and an ogre in it, and probably other guys. But, yeah.
First thing I want to bring up is the history behind this series.
Okay.
Witch Watch is a series created by Ken... Oops, I almost said Ken Wakoi. Definitely not him. Witch Watch is a series created by Kenta Shinohara.
Okay.
And fun fact, Shinohara worked as an assistant for Sorachi on Gintama. So
okay.
obviously, we've seen this thing before. Fujimoto's assistants went on to make their own manga like Hell's Paradise and Dandadan, and you can see the Chainsaw Man influence.
You can.
Urana worked for Okubo on Fire Force, and you
Yeah.
can see the Fire Force influence in Gachi Akuta. Naturally, it doesn't take long to see the Gintama influence in Witch Watch. As a matter of fact, Shinohara is quoted as describing Sorachi as a teacher. Obviously, this means that Sorachi's style of writing and art had a clear influence on his own works. This would help him go on to make 3 back-to-back-to-back hits, with Sket Dance in 2007.
Sket Dance was alright. It was alright.
Astra Lost in Space in
Okay.
2016, and of course Witch Watch in 2021. Also, fun fact that I just came across, apparently he and Yabuki Kentaru are brothers-in-law. Wouldn't exactly say I can see Ayakashi Triangle or Love Ru Darkness in Witch Watch, but it's good to know, I guess. Anyway, what I'm getting at is Sorachi clearly had a big influence on Shinohara. The main trio in Sket Dance is a lot like the Odd Jobs crew in Gintama, since they both take on odd jobs.
Gintama and Sket Dance to me seem more similar. But I'm gonna let Ouji cook.
Astra Lost in Space is more of a departure from this style, but is loved by fans. And of course, Witch Watch is basically Gintama with witches. So now that we know the history behind Witch Watch, let's talk about how it's so much like Gintama. Because while it doesn't look anything like Gintama and sounds like it has nothing to do with Gintama, this story hits a lot of the same beats. Witch Watch is about Nico, the Witch of Thousands who is regularly under the threat of dangerous warlocks. Her mother prophesizes that Nico will be in danger, so she sends her to live with her childhood friend Moi, who happens to be the descendant of ancient ogres that were created to serve witches in the past. Nico has trained for 6 years to master all of these new spells, and now Moi has dedicated himself to protecting Nico no matter what. Eventually, Nico gains more and more friends like Kon the Tengu and Nemu, a fellow witch that can transform into animals. Now, this description doesn't sound anything like the sci-fi samurai story of Gintama.
Because Gintama for me is so much of it is the setting. The setting itself is so unique and interesting. Whereas Witch Watch so far is just like it's a high school. You know?
But remember, it's all in how Witch Watch follows the same beats.
Okay.
Actually, real quick before I get into that, make sure to become a channel member if you're enjoying the video. You'll get custom emojis and badges, and you can pick which series I cover next. Now, like I was saying, the first thing that stands out about Witch Watch is that it is very much a gag comedy. The first chapter has...
Yeah, like that wasn't funny to me. Like the whole, oh, I'm gonna be flat. That was like so childish and stupid. Like, it really, it wasn't. I hope I don't get hate from Witch Watch fans, but to me, this joke specifically was like, what the
some drama and some romance,
yeah.
But it has that same old structure of crazy thing happens and then straight man reacts to the crazy thing.
Yeah.
In this case, Nico breaks Moi's window as soon as she appears, and then Moi gives a big reaction. And for the first volume, this is pretty much the same bit over and over.
Again,
Nico uses some wacky spell, something wacky happens, and then Moi reacts to that wacky thing. And if you've read Gintama, this should feel very familiar.
That is a similar formula. That is a very similar formula.
Gintama, Gintoki, or Kagura would do something silly, and the straight man Shinpachi would react to that silly thing. And just like in Gintama, Witch Watch has a lot of running gags. Nico...
But I might let Witch Watch cook, because the first few episodes of Gintama is like kind of like a little bit... It's not bad, but it's a bit rough. But it grows on you and just gets better and better. I haven't finished Gintama actually, which I need to do that. But like I got like 200 episodes in and I loved it. I just never got back to it and never finished it. But yeah, I can see what he's saying with that.
Go is a talented witch, but she's very clumsy and her spells always go wrong. Moi is overly serious to the point of absurdity. He also has a random hobby of collecting vintage jeans, and like that's a regular thing. Kon is a good guy, but he chases fame and glory, like the time he decided to start a YouTube channel with Nico. So as much as Witch Watch is a romance, it is also very much a comedy. And the comedy fits right in with classic Shonen Jump series like Gintama and Bobobo. But that doesn't mean it's all laughs. See, if you know about Gintama, then you know it's generally split up into two kinds of arcs. There's the comedy arcs,
and then there's the serious business arcs. And the serious business arcs, even if they're 2 episodes, like, there's an arc with Hijikata and this girl he used to love. That arc is 2 episodes and it almost brought me to tears. I need to make a video on that about like short stories because and then the Benny Zakura arc is pretty good as well. And I think there's a Benny Zakura movie too.
And then what people like to call the serious arcs. Now, they're called arcs, but really arcs is a bit of a misnomer because these arcs are like 5 chapters tops. At least in Gintama, anyway. In Gintama, you would have serious arcs that would go on for 10 plus chapters, but the so-called comedy arcs are only a few chapters. Witch Watch is similar, but also slightly different. So if you look at the wiki, it does have...
Because the way of describing Gintama is like a shonen, but instead of it going from arc to arc, is like you get all of the slice of life aspects in between those arcs. Like, sort of like a more daily life version of One Piece, because One Piece has that sort of similar effect to where, like, there's not like this breakage in between arcs. Everything sort of connects, but like it's an even more slice of life version of that, I would say, because One Piece doesn't really have slice of life episodes per se, but Gintama does. Like imagine in like if in Naruto, right? Instead of going from the instead of going from the Haku and Zabuza arc to the tuning exams, right? Straight from that to that. Imagine if they came back from the Haku and Zabuza arc and then we had 10 episodes of them like maybe slightly lamenting over what happened, but them doing random bits around the village, and then we go into the tuning exam stuff. So that's kind of how Gintama is.
Have arcs, but it doesn't really split up into comedy versus action. There's generally just periods in the story where it's mostly comedy and then it's serious for a while and then it goes back to comedy. Personally, I love this formula because I get a comedy manga that stands out from other shonen series like One Piece or Kagurabachi, but it also has a storyline that fleshes out all of the main characters. For example, in Gintama, as much as I love the comedy, my all-time favorite arc is the Mitsuba arc. This isn't the first serious
the Mitsuba arc is good as well. It's really good.
arc in Gintama, but it's the one that hits hardest for me. You get to see the backstory of the Shinsengumi. You find out about the romance between Mitsuba and Hijikata.
Yes,
and there's a super
That's the name of it. Is the Mitsuba arc.
emotional ending that is still one of the best story
This is the arc.
endings I've ever seen. So much
Yes.
so that if I'm not mistaken, it's still the #1 favorite arc among Japanese fans.
Yes,
And this
that arc is so fucking like I need to make a video on that. That's like one of the videos I've always wanted to make was about how more shonens need like short stories, and that is like the quintessential short story. It's only 2 episodes, but it's so and the ending, like you said, the ending hits you, bro. It hits you, man. I think it would hit me even harder because back when I was watching Gintama, right, I hadn't had a romance or relationship or anything like that before, so I was a younger guy. I was like, what, 16, 17? Like, I think it would hit me harder now, like, rewatching that.
This is the kind of stuff you can expect in Witch Watch. Witch Watch starts out with a weekly gag sort of formula. Like every chapter will be a different spell and the characters have to clean up Nico's mess. Then there will be a serious arc. The first real arc takes place when a warlock hatches this evil plan to capture Nico. But before that happens, there's a serious chapter that is still one of my favorites. In chapter 19, Nico's friend Kara asks Nico to use her magic to fix a letter. She explains that the letter was from her late mother, but her father shred the letter to hide some sort of secret. Since then, the two of them haven't talked at all. Nico explains that they have to collect all of the pieces first, so she and Moi agree to search through the shredder along with Kara. While they make a pile, Kara explains that the reason her father probably shred the letter was because Kara is likely the daughter of her mother's previous relationship. So the father wanted to hide the fact that he isn't actually her father. After hours of panning, Nico finally fixes the letter, but to her surprise, Kara learns that she's actually the daughter of her father's previous relationship. So her mother was actually hiding the secret the whole time, but she wanted to tell Kara the truth before she passed away. We then see a flashback to when Kara first met her mother, and the two of them instantly hit it off. So years later, having accepted her fate, Kara's mother thanks her for being her daughter. Now, this is a really nice chapter. It's nothing revolutionary, and it's admittedly a bit corny, but it's the kind of sappy story that hits you right in the feels like any good story. Plus, while it isn't this like big serious arc, it's a nice wholesome breakaway from the sillier chapters that leads Nico to post.
I think the reason, again, going back, I'm repeating myself, sorry, but going back to the Gintama thing, what stands out to me so much about Gintama is the cast and the environment. Because we have older characters, because even Shinpachi's slightly older than the typical shonen. I think Shinpachi's like 18, 19, maybe he's a bit younger. Kagura's younger, right? But Gintoki's like my age right now, 30. And then you got like the Mado guy who's like middle-aged. There's there's Gintoki's. There's the terrorist guy. I forgot his name. He is like, oh, I forgot all of the characters' name, but they're older characters, right? What is that guy's name? The I hope I don't get demonetized for saying the T word. Gintama characters. Who's the funny guy with like long hair? Katsura, yeah, my boy Katsura. Like, they're older characters that have been through stuff. That's, to me, is what makes it stand out. And then the fact that these are like high schoolers and it's just got a high school setting, and then there isn't that sort of weirdness to the environment, is what's like throwing me off with the Gintama parallel. But from what he's saying and from what I've seen so far, yeah, the setup of the gags and the way the gags work, it is very Gintama-esque. I'll give it that. So I'm just going to give the series some more time to cook, because maybe right now I'm just being a bit unfair to it. Yeah, Okita, this guy, the sadist guy. And then Sadaharu. Alright.
An ad in the school where anyone can come visit her for help with their problems. So, as you can see, Witch Watch is very much like Gintama. It's less science fiction and more fantasy, but you've got your main crew that does odd jobs for friends and strangers alike. There's a bunch of running gags and weekly shenanigans, but this is balanced out by the more emotional chapters and the broader narrative that drives all of the characters.
And something that Gintama does so well, like bar none does so well, Gintama will do this thing of where it'll introduce characters as gag characters, and they'll just be in the series like as gag characters, and then you'll get like a story piece with that character, and you'll understand the way they are. Like, because even that Matsuba arc about like that's where you really understand Hijikata. Before that, Hijikata is just kind of like, oh, Mayo, like he's the Mayo guy that's serious, and he's like Okita's foil. But we don't really understand that character until we get that arc, and that arc is like what solidifies it. So if Witch Watch does that kind of stuff of introducing characters as gag characters, and then you understand them through like a more serious business arc, I'm all for this series, honestly. But I'm going to give it time to cook.
Character growth. Now, that being said, as much as I love Witch Watch, it isn't without its own issues.
Okay.
Just like some people are tempted to skip the comedy arcs of Gintama, Witch Watch chapters can be hit or miss. As with any other gag manga, how good each chapter is will often come down to how good the main joke is.
Yes.
So if it's not that funny, then the chapter as a whole suffers. This doesn't happen a lot in Witch Watch, but there are some chapters that I'm not crazy about. In particular, there's this one recurring plot line where these two characters are writing their own manga, and to be honest, it's just not that funny. Like, I'm sure it'll be more entertaining once it's animated, but I tend to speed read through these chapters. Other than that, I'm in love with Witch Watch. I don't always follow it weekly, but it's been a favorite of mine ever since I started reading it a couple of years ago. Partly because it's so much like Gintama, but also because there's a couple of things I like even more. First of all, I like Shinohara's art style slightly more than Sorachi's. Sorachi's art style is great, and I love his characters, but Shinohara's style is more detailed, especially in the action scenes. As a result, Shinohara uses a style that feels very similar to the work of Yusuke Murata, who just so happens to be one of my all-time favorite artists.
Murata is a legend in the game. Murata is a legend. Because Murata is the Ice Shield guy, and I believe he does One Punch Man as well, right? Because, yeah, he does One Punch Man. Yusuke Murata. Yeah, One Punch Man and Ice Shield. Yeah, Ice Shield 21. This guy's stuff is so dope. It's so crazy.
So, as much as I love Gintama, Witch Watch is just better to look at. Speaking of which, in terms of the anime, Witch Watch is being done by Baiburi Animation, the studio that did Quintessential Quintuplets Season 2, the Quintessential Quintuplets movie, and is currently working on the 100 Girlfriends anime, which, as freaky as that last one is, still looks pretty good. Gintama looked great towards the end, but that was after years of an outdated aspect ratio and animation that was mostly okay. Finally, and this is more of a style thing, but I like that Witch Watch is a rom-com rather than just a comedy. There were a lot of romantic storylines in Gintama, but the main characters never really went anywhere. At most, it would just be teased. Witch Watch is kind of all about romance, especially between Moe and Nico.
But the problem is, I don't care about this. So far, I do not care about this romance so far. Like, it's kind of meh.
There's a lot of will they, won't they, but Shinohara does it in a way where there's real progress. It might not happen as fast as, say, Sign of Affection, but the romantic tension does lead somewhere the more you read the story.
Okay.
Plus, there's a lot of other romantic dynamics as well. So this is why I cannot recommend Witch Watch enough. It's a lot like Gintama, it's funny, it's got dumb jokes, plus it knows exactly how to hit you in the feels. On top of that, the manga looks amazing. The anime should look great. And unlike Gintama, you can expect some romance in most.
The anime's solid. I'll say so far, the production values on the anime is solid. Nothing stellar so far. The opening's pretty dope, actually. But overall, yeah, the animation's the anime's solid, I'd say.
Of the story. So if you want the perfect blend of wholesome romance, action, and comedy, then make sure to check out the spiritual successor of Gintama.
Okay.
But now I'd like to hear what you think. How would you compare
Look at this. Really nice piece of art.
Gintama and Witch Watch? What are your thoughts on the anime? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments.
Ooh, yeah, is this a color page? Like, this is, I like this. It's pretty good, man.
Pick my favorite and
yeah, like, it's pretty good. I like, look at this flow. It's nice. I like this.
Share it as comment of the week on my community tab.
Yeah, I really gets flows over like this. Like, that's where my eye goes like this.
And make sure to become a channel member. You'll get exclusive emojis and badges. You can pick which series I cover next, and you can even get your name in future videos. Also, check out my other anime recommendations, which you can find in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Alright, shout out to my boy Ouji. He's a really great YouTuber. And yeah, what do you think? Are you a fan of Witch Watch? Am I just out of hand with my takes on Witch Watch so far? Is it a great series that I just haven't recognized yet? Tell me your thoughts down below. I will catch you. I'm uploading like probably 2-3 times a day from now on, so I'm going to catch you on another video. I'm going to think of what my outro thing is and all of that soon, but for now I'm just going to say bye.